Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. If your kids are younger than that, please use the YouTube Kids app.
Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. How are you all? We finally had 2 sunny days here in a row. I almost feel like a hominid again. With Memorial Day approaching, I'm really hoping we can all start to get back to normal soon. Some places in the United States are starting to open up, such as Wisconsin, home of the Wisconsin werewolf. I'm wondering if we're about to hear a bunch of stories like our first one coming up in a minute about seeing the Dogman while performing as a designated driver. But before we get to that, I'd like to announce that today's episode is executive produced by LJ73. You know you're in the place to be when it's executive produced by LJ73. Thank you, LJ. We literally couldn't keep the show out there in the internet gas if it weren't for brave and loyal citizens like yourself. We're extremely grateful to you, LJ73. And if any of you other guys would like to be looked up to and admired as much as the wonderful LJ73, just join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or do it the way LJ did by clicking the join link directly underneath this video on YouTube. Either way, you get over 9 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories with an all-new uncensored story each week at peterbernard.com. So, what are things like now where you are? Is it still locked down? Is it starting to ease up yet, or the opposite? In New York, I see stores starting to reopen, but the people are still utterly scared. I look out of my cave window up high on the mountain, and I see them down there still walking around with masks on, even if they're the only person on the entire block. But what do I know? I'm only a Bigfoot. I dislike wearing masks, partially because it hides my beautiful Sasquatch face, but also because those masks force me to smell my own Sasquatch breath. We actually have a recent submission later in the show about a Dogman and a surgical face mask, but first, we've got this story that happened when the current crisis was nothing more than a gleam in a mad scientist's eye. This happened long before most of us had ever heard the word. Oh no, wait, I'm still not allowed to say it. Anyway, I can say the title of this story, and that is The Hopping Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got a story to tell you about a night I got chosen to be the designated driver for a bunch of my friends out on a bar hopping spree in Wisconsin. On the way back from the final establishment, we ran into what, in my opinion, could only have been the Wisconsin werewolf. This all happened in 2019, and I remember the trees were turning colors, so it had to have been in the autumn sometime. I had been hanging with this group of friends, and we each took turns on Saturday nights being the designated driver. This was a boring Saturday when I wasn't allowed to party. We had a complicated loop that would take us around to a number of different towns, all in one area, and we'd hit them in the same order each weekend, just like clockwork, moving in a generally northward direction from start to finish. The last leg of the tour involved driving out west on County Road H, just south of Hubert Creek Woods, or possibly part of it, I'm not really sure. I drove them out to the final place and waited out in my car. Some of the bars I had gone in with them earlier in the evening, and I would have a soda or a non-alcoholic beer. But as the night pressed on, they would be partying harder, and I would just stay in my car and listen to podcasts, or an audiobook, or music, or something. When they got ejected from this final place a few minutes after closing time, We were held up before leaving as one of our company needed to be privately ill for a little while before we could safely get going. It was really, really, really late by that point. I mean, I was going to be lucky if I got home before the sun came up. We had originally agreed for me to drop them off in one central location, and they would each make their way home by themselves from there. But I could tell that these guys were gonna need door-to-door service. I still had a long night in front of me as we left that place. We drove through the darkness on County Road H, and the guys were a mix of sleepy, sloppy, and slippery. I tried to ignore them and focus on the road. Just focus on the present moment. Just drive your car, and don't think about how long it's going to be before you can get some sleep. Just be happy to be driving, because that's where you're going to be doing anyway. Driving isn't in and of itself such a bad thing, so why be upset about it? These guys I was driving home had driven me home on other occasions, so it was only fair. These were the kinds of thoughts going through my head as I tried to stay in a positive mood and not give myself a stomachache. Part of the drive, the road becomes surrounded on all sides by dense forest, and it was on this part of our journey that we, or I, saw the thing that I saw. We came right around a turn on that forested road, and there, walking out onto the highway, was the Dogman. I was like, oh no, dude, and I was freaking out and screaming, but none of the guys even seemed to get what I was talking about. I was pointing, but they weren't looking, you know? And then, this really weird thing happened. One of them said, werewolf, which was exactly what I was thinking. But when I turned around to look at him, he was already talking about something else. He was looking in the other direction. I don't know if he even saw the Dogman, but somehow he said the word werewolf, almost as if we had some kind of temporary mind link in that moment. So the road there is a 2-lane blacktop with 2 yellow lines painted down the middle. The Dogman was filling the left lane with his left foot on the middle lines themselves. It had been walking across the road, going from one part of the forest to another. It apparently sensed us coming, and it stopped to regard us curiously. I wasn't sure if it had stopped to let me pass, so I slowed down the vehicle as we approached, unsure if I should be backing up or if I should just try to drive past the thing. Before I proceed with this story, I should probably give you a more detailed description of what I was seeing. It was really, really tall. Like 10 feet tall, taller than a bear tall. It was monster-sized in every sense. The overall impression was one of height, like a basketball player times 2. Although it was not shaped like Schwarzenegger, it looked very strong and athletic, far more so than any human or even any other land mammal that I can think of. It looked wily like a chimp, but much taller. And on its dog-like face, it wore a confused expression. It even tilted its head in that cute way that dogs do. The coloring of the creature was gray, but it was mostly a very dark gray or almost black color. It stood up like something out of a movie or Greek mythology or something. It didn't stand exactly like a man, and it stood nothing at all like a bear, but it stood there on its hind legs, and it was clear that it had walked there in the same manner. I was completely sober, but I was tired, and I just wanted to complete my duties and get home to bed. I know this might sound insane, but I slowly nudged the car forward, staying on the right side of the right lane, hoping that big dog would stay chill until we'd gotten past it. The guys were continuing to not notice the situation we were in, so I was in the position of having to make all the decisions entirely with my own tired brain, and with my buddies screaming non sequiturs while I was trying to think. Everything seemed mellow with the Dogman, until all of a sudden it wasn't. The dogman objected to me driving that close to it, and it just freaked out, barking at me, trying its best to get into the car and get directly in my face. It was the most terrifying moment of my life as I looked right into the mouth of an actual dogman as it wanted to bite my head off. It was not a thing I ever wanted to see, but now it's an image that I will never be free of. It's quite humbling to see how easily a dogman could have ended everything for you. It gives you a sense of perspective that I don't think you can get any other way. I guess if you've escaped a predator, then you know the feeling. And if you have, then sister or brother, please welcome me to the club, because it happened to me too. I'm only still here walking this planet by the grace of God. This story could have ended so many different ways that might have been quite sad, but it had a happy ending for me. As the dogman scared me so badly, I slammed my foot on the gas and we skidded out of there. I didn't really have control of the car again for some time, but we accelerated as fast as that old hunk of junk could go, and I'm pretty sure we left a lot of rubber back on that road. The guys cheered as they felt us driving faster, unaware how close we all came to a violent and grisly end. The entire experience was so surreal. If that dogman had broken through the glass and gotten to me, my life story probably would have ended, while I heard my out-of-it buddies laughing and cheering. I had such complicated emotions driving away from the monster on that night. My heart continued to beat hard, even after delivering every one of them home, even after driving to my home, even after going to bed while the sun was coming up outside. I was kind of emotionally messed up for a while, and it hurt that I had nobody to talk to about any of it. None of my friends had any memory of seeing what I saw, and I didn't feel like there would be a good point in telling them too much about it. They would probably just think I was a weirdo, and I worry that they may already think that of me since I am the only one of us who went to grad school and I'm a bit of a nerd. It would give them another thing to make fun of me for, but it wouldn't be the kind of joking around that brings guys closer together. It would be something that would serve to divide us. We continued to go on weekend adventures like this up until early 2020, when it became impossible for a while, obviously. Now that things may be cooling down in the area, and our favorite establishments may be opening up again very soon, I expect I'll find myself driving down that lonely forest road once again. I know the chances of the dogman putting in a return appearance in my lifetime while I'm driving are pretty close to zero, but I have to admit, I'm still scared of the idea of ever driving in that area after midnight ever again. I hope that if we do run into any more upright walking canids, that it happens on a night when someone else is the designated driver. I'm hoping that next time someone else has to make the decisions about how to escape the bar-hopping dogman, the dogman, and the surgical mask. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I ran face to face into an actual dogman the other day when I cut through a park near my home. The weirdest thing about my encounter was that my first reaction upon seeing the strange beast was to pull my surgical mask up over my nose. Before I begin, I want to be honest with you about the kind of guy I am. I'm what they call a character. I like to make up wild stories and elaborate practical jokes, and all my friends and family know this. I was pranking adults when I was a kid, and it's in my blood. I can't help my sense of humor. There is a saying among those of us who choose to live this way: live by the prank, die by the prank. The more people know that you enjoy pulling jokes, the less they're gonna believe you when you tell them about the giant dogman you've encountered in New Jersey. None of my friends believe me that I had an angry, upright walking canid get right in my face. I don't even think my own mother believes the story that I'm gonna tell you. And I know this is my own fault. I can't blame my friends and family for thinking I'm trolling them with this story. I've pulled enough practical jokes for 3 lifetimes. By the same token, I'm not a whiner. I'm not like, oh, I'm such a poor victim because nobody believes my story. We all live in our own worlds anyway. It doesn't matter much to me if you understand my world or not. I'll tell you what I swear actually happened to me. You can believe it or not, but I think at the very least in either case, you'll agree it's a pretty strange and interesting story. Here's what happened. I was out driving with my friend when I got a text message from my elderly uncle who lives in Haddonfield, New Jersey. My buddy dropped me off at my relative's house, and I helped him out with his problem, which turned out not to be such a huge deal after all. I live the next town over in Cherry Hill, and I decided on a lark to walk home through Pennypacker Park. It's a small forested area where scientists once found a skeleton of a hadrosaur. I think that's cool. It makes me wonder how many other kinds of dinosaurs and ancient animals I might be walking over every day. I remembered that I cut through those woods 4 or 5 times when I was a teenager, and I was in the mood for exercise that day after being cooped up so much lately, so off I went. I should say that I had my surgical mask on, but I had lowered it under my nose and mouth so it basically just covered my chin. When old or sick-looking people walked near, I could slip the mask up, but in the meantime, when no one was around, it was a lot easier to breathe. I used to have asthma when I was a kid, and I still have a problem with anything covering my nose and mouth when I'm trying to breathe. It's probably mostly psychological, but my psychology is the only one I know how to live inside of, so psychosomatic or not, it seems real to me. I entered the woods, my surgical face mask on my chin, my eyes looking up at all the tall and beautiful trees. An hour later, my feet ached, and so did my neck from looking up so much. I wasn't sure if I had gotten lost, or if it was just a sign that I am now old. But cutting through those trees sure was taking me a lot longer than it did in my memory. Of course, extreme physical exertions are less memorable when you're young, so maybe I just didn't remember how hard the trek was because back then I was having so much fun. That was then. This was now. I was aching. I was lost. And I was having no fun at all. I looked at my watch and counted how many minutes ago I would have already been home if I had used my phone app and called for a driver. Onward I trudged, and it was starting to get darker and colder. I wasn't really prepared for any of this, and I began to try to rush. I hate to admit it because I'm a fully grown adult, but I was starting to get really scared. And then, boom, as soon as I admitted my fear to myself, it was almost as though the forest said, I'll give you a reason to be frightened. And then, bam, there it was right in front of me. I nearly stumbled into a hairy man whose shoulders were at my eye level. He turned and started shouting at me, and my first reaction was to throw up my hands and complain at him to chill. I was like, whoa, man, cut it out, before my eyes were able to take in enough detail for me to realize that this was not your average dude or bro. Not at all. This was some kind of animal man, like a savage monster man, right there in the forest outside of Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Granted, Cherry Hill is not New York City, but it's not like it's in the middle of nowhere either. I didn't think anything like that could live so close to human civilization. But on the other hand, I was walking through a woods that wasn't really meant to be a shortcut, so why shouldn't strange animals live there? The screaming that this guy was doing made no sense to me. I spent a few seconds trying to guess what language he was speaking before I realized he was barking like a dog. That sent a chill through me, because I thought that this was some kind of insane man I was dealing with. This had all happened before I even looked up high enough to make eye contact and see that this hairy manimal in front of me had a growling, barking head, not unlike your average Rover, Fido, or Spot, except you don't usually have to look up to see your pet pooch, and he usually doesn't have a mouth large enough to bite you in two. I wasn't in Pennsylvania, but I think this was the Pennsylvania Dogman. I mean, Cherry Hill is pretty close to PA. It doesn't seem impossible. As soon as I saw that thing, and I stared at its long, sharp teeth, dripping and spitting giant dog drool everywhere, the first thing I did, before even thinking or screaming or anything, was I reflexively pulled my surgical mask back up off my chin to cover my mouth and nose. I've gotten so trained so quickly that the first thing I did when coming face to face with a giant, predatorial, kind of upright walking canine was to pull up my surgical mask. Don't want to catch any doggy colds now after all. So, my mask securely adjusted over my nose. I then screamed and ran away from the monster. Almost immediately I found my way onto a path with other people on it. I never would have gone in that direction if I hadn't been scared off by the Dogman, so I suppose the incident turned out to be fortunate for me. I was so surprised and scared, I thought I was going to have a heart attack, but I didn't. So I guess when you think about it, this was all good. I just think it's funny how I put the face mask back up over my nose and mouth as though that were like putting on a suit of armor or a bulletproof vest or something. It wasn't going to save me from that creature if it decided that it wanted to harm me in some way. I'm just fortunate that the Dogman did not seem to have humans listed on its menu. I really didn't do anything to get myself out of that problem. I just got lucky. What's that saying? Standing on the shoulders of giants? That's where I was at that moment. The truth was that the Dogman could have taken me down easily. I was so out of shape and he had over a foot of height on me. But the humans of the past, prior generations of Americans, those guys were so badass that the idea of attacking humans was bred out of at least this particular subspecies of Dogman. Because the people who built this country, both the natives and the immigrants, because they were all such no-nonsense survivors, that Dogman assumed I would be a bad risk to attack. I only got to live to tell you this tale because of the greatness of the people who've lived here before us for so many generations. So, the odd after effect of my terrifying Dogman experience was to feel a sense of awe for this country and for all the people who are living now all descended from. We all, no matter what our lineage, come from a resilient history. We are not, any of us, from a people who always succeeded. But we are, all of us, from a people who always fought back. This is why that Dogman did not take me down when I was easy prey. This is why the Dogman respected me. That respect was earned for me generations back. If we want the human race to survive into the future, we need to start earning nature's respect for our future generations now. Because the Dogman reminded me, we are not a people who has always won, but we are a people who never stop trying to win. And that was the lesson I learned from the Dogman and the surgical mask.
I shall return. Like last night's triple lupa, I shall return. I'll be back here May 23rd to help host our Memorial Day Military Dogman Stories. All stories alleged to have happened to military service people or veterans. I'm going to read one of the stories myself. You won't want to miss it. It should prove to be quite memorial.
And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, and absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh, wait. YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then Every weekend, we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story.
Come back for more scary stories.